Hey there, YouTube. Welcome on back to Artichoke Dip. My name is Rob, solo tabletop gamer. And, well, here it is, January. Get towards the end of January. It's blistering cold up here in Michigan. Snow on the ground, which makes me think of snow-covered mountains nestled at the base of the mountains underneath gloomy, foggy skies, low light, and dread the village of Monrovia. Alright, my friends, before I get into the video, if you liked the video, please click the like button. Let me know you liked the content. If you haven't subscribed, you're new here, welcome on in. Please click that subscribe button followed by the bell icon. Every time I upload a video, you'll get a notification so you don't miss one. So, what sparked the idea for this video? Because I have been lacking enthusiasm lately, and I find this happens to me at times with gaming, and it's not I think everybody kind of, they get into this rut where it's I guess you would call it gamer burnout. I guess it is, where you game, and then after a while it kind of leaves you wanting more. And, you know, I'm sure we've all been there before. As a matter of fact, I decided to put the tabletop down for a while, and I jumped back into Skyrim for a bit and was playing Skyrim on the PS3 console. And it was at that point I seen a book had gone on sale and decided to pick it up, and I was thumbing through it, and it really rekindled a memory for me. And let's excuse me, get into that book, The Curse of Strahd. Now, I thumbed through this, and what I mean, I haven't ran any games through this yet. I thumbed through it, and I was reading the high points, how they've made changes and what they've done from the original to this. Now, for most parts, I have to say, it's good. It's decent. I don't think it's anywhere as deadly, I'm gonna say, as the original Ravenloft, but you know, I may be wrong about that, and when I get into a game session with it, I may find out completely different. But I have been playing other game systems, gotten into Forbidden Lands, I've been playing RuneQuest, and it's been a while since, actually it's been over a year since I have played old school D&D. And man, I was like sitting there thumbing through this, and I was like, I really miss the old school stuff. I really miss going through this Ravenloft, the original I6, the challenge, the simplicity, the everything about it that makes this such a great system for what it is. But then it came down to, what system do I want to use? Do I want to use, you know, advanced D&D? Do I want to use second edition? And the light bulb went off, and I said, well, wait a minute. I don't even have to do that. I can make something way cooler that I'm going to really enjoy and use another resource. And that system is this right here, Castles and Crusades. Now, if you're newer to the hobby, you've just gotten into it, and I'm going to say you've gotten into it maybe around 3rd edition, 4th edition, or more recently, which I think a lot of people now out there that you see engaging with YouTube and other outlets, I will say, on the internet, is all 5th edition, and that's what they know. And well, it made sense. It's the most current edition. Huge amounts of money thrown into marketing for it, for their electronic online games as well as tabletops. So if you're one of them gamers and you missed out on the early years of D&D, the time a lot of people talk about when they refer to, you hear, like I say, the edition wars, people say, no, this edition stinks because of this and that, and you got to get back to this and that. You may want to look into Castles and Crusades. Now, I have picked this up, and this was in the early 2000s. Matter of fact, I picked this up right after it was released. I got the original slipcover that came with the cardboard slipcover, and it came with all the manuals and everything you needed. But at its very core, what it is it's advanced D&D. But they take 3rd edition, because at the time 3rd edition was king, 3rd edition D&D, and they put the D20 system onto that. I have no way to, how do I put this? I want to be very careful how I say this, because I don't want people going, well, it's not true. But I think when it comes to the retro clones, and, a few years back, we've just seen the market flooded with retro clones. I feel as if Castles and Crusades was like the first ones that kind of pioneered that, captured the essence of the original D&D, put it into print, and made it accessible for everybody at that point to be able to get their hands on it and experience again. Now, if you're wondering, as far as solo goes, does Castles and Crusades work well? Absolutely. If you find yourself playing 5th edition and you enjoy 5th edition solo, Castles and Crusades is not going to be that far of a stretch from it. But what you do see in here that's very unique, unlike 5th edition, where the saving throws are, well, you even seen a difference with those. And if you go back to the original editions, the saving throws were quite different. They were very, very exact as to what you could roll a saving throw for, all the way down to Dragon's Breath. Whereas as we moved on through the editions, they've kind of made it, you got 3 saving throws that you can select from: Fortitude, Reflex, and Will, as they call it, to be able to resist a mental attack of magic, if you will. Whereas of this, it goes a little bit more further in depth. It has that old school feel to it with the saving throws. It has, when you look at the characters, the cool thing I like about the way this system is set up, and I'm going to get into this in a little bit and explain why I chose this system, the backstory, and what I used to make my first, I'm going to say, level 1 adventure into the realms of Ravenloft. But the cool thing is the character advancement in this. And every game system is, obviously that's the drive behind leveling your characters. Your character gets stronger, gets more proficient. You get to deal more damage. Now, this game system is no different. As a matter of fact, your character starts out pretty decent, I have to admit. And if you were to compare this to the original advanced D&D, they are way overpowered. Putting that into perspective, that the original editions of D&D, fighting was a last resort. Fighting was a deadly proposition because, well, your characters didn't get a whole lot of hit points, and the monsters or encounters, I should say, were pretty well powerful, and they could, kill your party like in no time. And this edition is not this edition, but this particular game has taken that into account and really made it a more leveled and more enjoyable system to be able to experience that feeling of the original editions again. So, as I was sitting there thumbing through the 5th edition of Strahd, and I'm looking at that, and I said, man, I'm like, the thing that I see that's kind of, in a way, limiting into the scope of what Ravenloft really is. And it seems like what they did, in my opinion, reading the introduction, they said the original Ravenloft, it's all there, it's all in there, and it's all represented in there. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, it's cool, you stuck to that. But then as I was reading through it, I'm like, well, yeah, it's there, but there are like a whole lot of changes to it. Some of them was like, okay, I can understand you're changing that to fit 5th edition. Others is kind of like, oh, you kind of like made it weak, particularly with the mist. The mist, even though you have penalties against your constitution for trying to leave the mist, it unlike the original two where the mist were deadly. Once you entered the mist, you had to remain in the mist. Once your characters walked out of the mist, they couldn't breathe. That was it. And your characters are more likely going to die, which was the whole thing about Ravenloft. That was the dread of Ravenloft. Once your characters came from another realm outside of Ravenloft and entered in through the mist and breathed them, they could never leave and return. Which gets back to where the main theme, if you will, idea behind Ravenloft is your characters are constantly looking for artifacts and portals and everything to be able to escape Ravenloft and get them back to where they came from. But in reality, there really is no way. Once you're there, you're pretty much going to die there. I like that. I really like that about Ravenloft. It's just like so evil. But anyways, so I decided, okay, I want to play Ravenloft, but even using this, my first level characters, and jumping right into this, they wouldn't last very long. As a matter of fact, I don't even think I would get a foot inside the castle before I was dead. So I went back to another source book I have, and I want to talk about this. If you like Ravenloft, if you're new into the gaming, and maybe you've picked the new Curse of Strahd up, and you're enjoying it, and you're playing that, and you're loving that, that's cool. But there's another book out there, if you enjoy Ravenloft, I strongly suggest you look for and add to your library, and that is the Domains of Dread. Now, this was written for 2nd edition, and I have to say, so far, in my opinion, there hasn't been a more comprehensive and just a huge encyclopedia of Ravenloft unlike this one. So, unlike the original Ravenloft, where it's giving you a small snapshot of this area of the village of Barovia, Castle Ravenloft, kind of as we see here in the newer one, Strahd. And this right here gives you a huge overview. As a matter of fact, Strahd's not the only evil tyrant of Ravenloft. There are many. And just as many other tyrants that there are in Ravenloft, they all have their unique backstories as to how they have come to Ravenloft. And likewise, you find out there's more to Ravenloft than just, well, the gypsies that are going to read your fortune, or the village of Barovia. There's a whole lot more. Let's see if I can flip to the world map. There we go. So instead of looking at the little snapshot as we have seen, you are given this huge area to be able to venture through Ravenloft and get lost. And as a matter of fact, you could spend years in here and probably never see the end of it, and I imagine you'd probably get burned out on gaming in Ravenloft and move on to another campaign setting. But it was with this that I decided this is kind of where I wanted to do my starting point. I want to go into Ravenloft, but instead of like I have played so many times before, just going straight into Ravenloft, into the village of Barovia. Hi, how are you? Oh, we're oppressed. What are you oppressed by? This evil vampire that lives in a castle up there. Okay, we'll go up there and kill him, just to find out you can't kill him because he's immortal. He turns into a gaseous form. He goes off. He heals, and while he's healing, he sends an army of undead to come out and kill you. Pretty much. There's so much more to Ravenloft than just that. Now, how I decided to do my backstory was recently I have found that even like about a year ago is where I noticed the change started to happen, and it's when 5th edition came out, and I bought the Essentials kit, that's it, and I rolled up the first characters, and the first characters I rolled up were dwarves. They were just all dwarves, and I played through that, and I really enjoyed it. I really had fun with it. Now, and this is the thing I'm going to challenge you guys on. Something I'm going to throw out there to maybe some ways to look differently at gaming rather than just minis, terrain, and dice, but even more so the story, but diving deeper into one particular race inside this fantasy world, and that is the dwarves. And I've always played half elves or half elf. Of course, in my earlier years of gaming when I was younger, it was just, human. Halflings, not too much of gnomes, really haven't, and I really need to. But I've noticed when you create a gaming, whether it's a one-off gaming scenario or you decide to make a campaign out of it, but you make them all the same race, you then at that point have, as you are writing up your backstory, a more comprehensive feeling of, hey, there's a history behind them. They come from this rich culture over here into the mountains, and how do I get from they're the strong kingdom that lives in this mountainous area to how do they venture into the mists of Ravenloft? Well, that's what I was confronted with. And as I sat and I thought about it, and I made all my characters, I made them all dwarf, and I got to thinking, and I'm like, okay, so got one that's a cleric, one that's a fighter, gotta have a fighter. And I said, I want to use an assassin this time. And I think this is going to be rather interesting. So I got to that point, but it's like the story. How am I going to go from point A to point B? And that's when I came up with this backstory. And it really helped with all of this. And if you haven't tried this yet, it's something that I suggest. Give it a shot. Do a small one-off adventure. Maybe one gaming night. And see how it works out for you. But how it started out was I wrote up in the year 728 of their calendar year. Something had happened. Their world began to take a tumble and descend into turmoil, followed by what they marked as the year of rain, because it rained almost every single day for a year, destroying crops. And at that point, trade goods began to dwindle, resources began to run thin, that kingdoms rose up against one another across the entire world as they view it, if you will. And they weren't spared from it. There was just war over territory, over resources and goods, until at last they were able to settle their differences. Things started to take a turn for the better, and at that point, peace was again restored. Now, 10 years, this happened in the 10-year span. Towards the end of the 10 years, the high priest of their temple inside this dwarven kingdom, he was observing the stars, and he noticed the strange star constellation or conjuncture, if you will, in the sky that normally isn't there. And to further enhance this, the northern lights, which they almost never see, was just dancing against the horizon of the sky. Now, he perceived this as an omen and went to the king and warned him. He says, I'm seeing these warnings in the sky. There's something horrible coming. But of course, it kind of, fell on deaf ears, because the way the king looked at it, everything was moving forward. Everything was getting better. So as the high priest was observing this night after night, and he would see the same conjuncture in the heavens and just the aurora borealis dancing, he noticed a fog that began to move in across the landscape and across the mountainscape. Eventually, this fog engulfed everything. And in the winter months of these snow-capped mountains where they dwell, at that point, this thick fog has blanketed the entire area. As trade caravans left to take their goods and disperse them throughout the land, trading with other kingdoms, they went missing. They never arrived to the destination point. Now, at this point, this really alarmed the king because, let's face it, this could spark another war. It was at that point the king had ordered checkpoints along the trade point traveling way and have large bonfires built and have them also manned. So the fires would be large enough to where they could be seen in both day and night, and as the traders would traverse the path, they would have a light source to be able to navigate them. But then that didn't help as much either. People were still getting lost in this heavy, thick fog, and it was at that point the king decided to send out search parties to be able to go out and at least get some answers. Why are these people disappearing? Where are they going? And furthermore, if you see them along the path, help direct them so they can get their way to here and back, and so the resources don't dwindle any further. This is where I'm going to bring my characters into the story. This is where they start out. They are a small search party, and the whole idea behind them is to go to the checkpoints and at that point try to gather information as to, did you see them pass this way? Which way did they go? Did you see anything weird? But I don't know how all that's going to play out and the random encounters that are going to happen and so on and so forth. But what I do know is eventually along their travels, as they venture into these thick fog banks, they're going to find themselves as they walk out of the fog bank in a very, very different world altogether, which they're going to have a hard time finding their way back to. And that's where everything's going to start. But the reason why I did the backstory the way I did is, I got first level characters. And as I send them first level characters out into this world, the last thing I want to do is barrage them with liches and wraiths and hordes of undead and everything else is just going to be like, first encounter, dead. They're all dead, total party kill. So at this point, I want to start my first level characters out and put some smaller encounters first to start building experience and building them up, and give them that time to be able to lick their wounds, if you will, heal, and move on. So that's how I got to where I was at, and wanting to get into some of the older school gaming. You gotta love old school. You have to love the old school gaming. And I have to say, man, I am really, really looking forward to seeing how this all comes together and how it plays out. But, you know, it's kind of a challenge for you guys out there as well. I mean, you're sitting here, you're listening to this talking head ramble on about my gaming and how I design this and what I find so enjoying about it and everything, but give it a shot. And particularly, like I said, if you're new into gaming and maybe you have 5th edition, you've been playing a lot of 5th edition, and my understanding is I think you can still purchase some of the older editions from Wizards of the Coast. I know a lot of the older editions out there are getting harder to find. I think pretty much all the stuff that was out there has been bought up. I will check every once in a while, and I really don't see anything like I used to. So that leaves you with the option of looking for something a little bit more modern, like Castles and Crusades. Now, I think Castles and Crusades now, I think they're into their 3rd revision or edition of the game system. Don't quote me on that. And the reason why I say that is I'm happy with this system. I love this system. And it's you would just have to experience it for yourself to... I could sit here and I could talk for hours, but unless you sit down and you experience it yourself, you'll never really know. But it truly does capture the essence of old school gaming and bring it to life. The way that D&D truly was intended to be. Now, the comment I made earlier, where, and how I always stress, when you play solo, you have to have a 3D representation. You know, you just, if you're going to play solo, you do need that, because without it, you're kind of, well, you can do theater of the mind. I know for me, my, how do I put this, my outlook on that, particularly when it comes to miniatures, if I can see it, I can kill it. So that's the reason why I do the type of gaming I do. And plus on top of that, I love miniatures. I love making terrain and doing stuff like that. So it's different levels of the hobby that I enjoy, in different avenues, if you will, of it as well. But when you get to the actual core of old school gaming compared to the newer stuff, now, one of the examples I'm going to give you that I noticed just right off the bat, I mean, immediately, was the fact that you get into the Taroka deck, I believe they call that, if I'm pronouncing that correctly in here. The Taroka deck. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Ravenloft and you don't know what I'm talking about, so in Ravenloft, one of the key elements I'm going to say of that story system is the Visitani. And the Visitani are basically gypsies. They do a fortune for you. And the fortune telling basically changes the matrix of the game. So every time you play Ravenloft, depending on how the fortunes fall, it's going to make it a completely different experience every single time, which when this game originally came out, that was like, groundbreaking stuff right there. But it's still the same in this. But the thing is, they show you all the cool decks of the cards in the back of the book, and they do explain to you. And it was funny the way I was reading it. Well, if you want to, you can, go and get that crummy deck of playing cards over there. Take these cards out, and you'll have this inferior deck to use for your game. Or you can just purchase them straight from us, and you're going to get highly illustrated Taroka cards delivered straight to you, which is another way you can do it. No, I'm not. How do I put this? I'm not at all, faulting them for that or shedding it in a bad light, because let's face it, at the very core, they're in this to make money. So of course they're going to make add-ons to market to us to make even more money. That seems to be the way of the world, if you will. Everything is about who has the most amount of money. So this D&D is no different. But when you get into the original, it's really cool. It goes through it and it explains to you, so go and get a deck of playing cards. And it says, find a regular 52 card deck of playing cards. Remove all 2, 4, 6, 8, and 9s and Joker cards from the deck. Now you have a set of 4 suits with 8 cards in each suit. Shuffle the deck. If you don't have a regular deck of cards, this is the cool thing I liked about it. You can get the same results by rolling 1d8 to determine the type of card and 1d4 to determine its suit. Roll again if you get the same card in any suit twice. So the cool thing is they went as far as saying, okay, well, you can use a set of playing cards to do this, but if you really don't want to bust up your set of playing cards and potentially sabotaged family card game night, you can use your dice instead. And that was the difference between the older Ravenloft compared to the newer. Now, am I hating on the new Ravenloft? No, absolutely not. I haven't played it yet. I intend to, and I'm going to get into that. I was going through it and I said, do I want to go through Barovia again? Well, I'm going to have to if I play this, but it's kind of like, I want to play in Ravenloft, but I want to play something rather than just going and hunting down Strahd. And with that, that's why I have said, I strongly urge you, if you do not have this, to look for this book and pick this up. Add it to your collection if you enjoy Ravenloft. You will not be sorry. I will admit that to you. Now, if you're using 5th edition, we'll say, and you have no intentions in, like I'm using Castles and Crusades to use another system, don't fret. Don't worry about that. This is D&D. The nice thing is you're just using a newer edition of it, and there's going to be some minor changes, if at all, that you have to use to be able to make it compatible with what you're playing. Really, what this book is it's a snapshot of the entire Ravenloft world, if you will. It's not even actually a world, it's a plane. And what you can expect to encounter, who is the tyrant that runs that area, and the people that inhibit it. So you can just use the story elements straight out of here and put it right to your 5th edition, and then at that point add your encounters in. Or you can use the encounters that they do in fact give to you in here. Now, converting encounters is really, really not that hard. So I tell everybody this. Anytime you get any older D&D stuff, that if you look at the way that the D20 systems work, so anything prior to 3rd edition, you're going to, it's all about subtraction. Anything from 3rd edition forward, it's about addition. It's very, very simple. Take that AC number that you look at on your encounter. At that point, count up to 10. So if you have an AC 5, you count up, that's going to be 5, and then add 10 to it, and you're going to come up with an AC 15. That's the way that when I convert any old D&D stuff into the more modern D20 systems, how I do it. And you'll find it works out to be pretty well balanced. Now, if you do that and you find that the AC level is too low and or too high, change it to, at that point, to accommodate your gaming taste and the way that you want your game flow to go, because at the end of the day, it's all about having fun, and really not a whole lot more than that. But I just wanted to talk about that. I wanted to touch bases. And I haven't made a video in a while, get that out there. I've been kind of caught in this, like I said, this rut lately, to where I just experienced some minor gamer burnout, and like I said, it was at that point I sat down and I started to read that Strahd, and that rekindled that, and I was like, man, old D&D. I got to get into the older D&D, play some of that, and go from there. Do I have other systems to play? Absolutely. Are there other systems that I should be playing and reviewing and talking about? Absolutely. But if I get to that point to where I'm forcing myself to sit down and play through a game system to make a video about it, and I'm not really enjoying it, then I'm really not gaming, and I really can't give you an honest to God review of that game system that's 100% other than that. So now there is another game system that I'm going to be talking about in the future, and I have touched bases with the author of it, and she has sent me a copy. Thank you so much. And it's called Reign of Dystopia, and it is a RPG system that's built off of her book. I did read her book. It was a great book. It was a short story, and so I'm looking forward to doing a review on that. I have been... how do I put this before I wrap this video up? So, in spite of recent events, depending on where you're watching this in the world, and thank you very much for everybody across the globe that watches my videos and said, hey, cheers here from Spain, Germany, so on and so forth. Thank you so much. I love those. I love it when you do that. Here in the U.S., we have just seen... I question every day, is it a bad dream I have not woken up from yet? Or is this really happening? Or am I in a alternate universe, in like a Twilight Zone setting, sitting down and watching all this stuff unfold? And so I think a lot of that has to do with it as well. I would have to say, like most of us, I try to limit my exposure to news, but you just can't help. It's like watching a train wreck. You know it's going to be, the ending's going to be bad. You know you probably shouldn't watch this, but you do anyways because you have to know how it ends. So, I mean, it's just, yeah, all the craziness that's been going on lately has just been just that crazy. I hope things get back to somewhat what we could call normal. I am still waiting for Rod Sterling to step out around a corner smoking a cigarette and giving the dialogue about how the next day's gonna go, because it's the way that it feels some days, and I'm sure I speak for many of you out there as well. So, but yeah, I'm hoping to get that behind me and to work on some more videos and get some more stuff out. Alright, my friends, that's gonna about wrap it up for this video. And if you enjoyed it, please click the like button, and if you haven't subscribed, please click that subscribe button followed by the bell icon. Every time I upload a new video, you get a notification so you don't miss one. Alright, my friends, Artichoke Dip, signing off.